David Harbour dons the red coat and hat, wrangles the reindeer, and delivers some serious season's beatings in the new Christmas action thriller, Violent Night. Now sure, it's a lot like Die Hard, but could this become your new holiday favorite? When a group of mercenaries attacks the estate of a wealthy family, Santa Claus must step in to save the day. So like I said, this stars David Harbour as Santa, but we've also got John Leguizamo, Beverly D'Angelo, Alexis Louder, and Alex Hassel in this cast. Now, this is a contained action piece that takes place over one night in an isolated, uber-rich family compound out in the middle of nowhere. Bad people come to the compound to steal, and they unexpectedly meet an obstacle in the form of Kris Kringle, who just happened to be at the home delivering presents, and eating the cookies, and drinking the very expensive liquor, and then maybe even taking a nap. Now, this Santa isn't the typical nice and jolly old elf we normally see in holiday movies. Harbour plays him with a tired and detached persona, like the guy has given up on humanity, so he's just going through the motions. Barely. Harbour is gruff, and he grumbles a lot. He's even mumbling a bunch of lines through clenched teeth. But this works. His portrayal fits perfectly within the story and makes for a character that we can believe in, and maybe even root for. The rich family is mostly despicable. They're caricatures of how we'd imagine the 1% of the 1% live, and even behave. Now, it's comical in a way, but also forced in another. But luckily, we just have to know that they're rich and that they have something that the bad people want. And while a couple of the family members do have redeeming qualities to them, there's one in particular who absolutely steals the show. Leah Brady plays Trudy, and this young girl is earnest and sweet, and she becomes the person we care most about within the story. And she's the voice of reason and conscience, but also this hopefulness and joy. And she was awesome to watch. And there's a portion where she even gets to join in on the action. And that was a lot of fun to see because there were audible gasps at some of the stuff that were shown. And that's something this film does really well. The action is heinous and violent. Just as it should be based on the name of the movie, right? There are some brutal kills, and some even mixed with comedy. But then the odd thing is the musical choices that accompany so many of the action sequences. There are light and cheery holiday tunes playing over insane hand-to-hand battles where people are having their heads smashed and appendages snapped. It shouldn't work, but it really does. It creates an unsettling but satisfying mood, and I was fully invested in what was being shown as the halls were being decked with parts of holly. But then, when there isn't action happening, the story tends to drag in spots. Now, some of the downtime is used to give us some cool background and insight into Santa, but for the majority of the scenes between the crazy action, the time passing, it was just very noticeable. So I found myself wishing for more action. We get some fairly quickly in the movie, and some of it is shocking, but then there's nothing for quite a while before it begins to pick up again. And then there are even more pauses within there. This didn't need to be an all-out action fest with zero downtime, but I really do think portions could be cut and trimmed to make this paced more efficiently so that it never loses momentum. And it's not even like there was a lot of anticipation that was being built in those slower moments. I wasn't on edge or even nervous about an outcome. The story didn't set it up for that. So then I felt the time. Now, I love the setting of the massive mansion because it provides enough places to hide while still maintaining a very isolated location. And while most of the bad guys are throwaway characters that we don't really even know, there are a few that get to have some decent screen time and they add a bit of fun to the story. John Leguizamo is just plain cold, and I really enjoyed that angle to his persona. We can see that there's more to him, but it's shut out and stomped on so that he can maintain his edge. He's got a few close hench people, and they're funny to watch, especially when they engage in this particular chase sequence that's in the latter half of the film. There's a call out to another Christmas movie, and then this pays homage to it in a very entertaining but painful way. And for the story itself, it's very generic, and even a fairly blatant ripoff of Die Hard. And while that didn't bother me while I was watching, it does lessen the creativity and the impact of part of the story in the long term. The impetus for all the action, it becomes very forgettable, but the action itself isn't, especially with some of the kills as Santa slays his opponents. The sequences shift to watching the bad guys try to carry out their plan in the mansion, and these are very rote and undetailed. There's extremely little development on what's going on, making these throwaway scenes that are made with false suspense. And there were one or two where we're supposed to be tense with anticipation, but there was absolutely zero emotion felt while I was watching. Maybe except for some boredom. I mean, think in Die Hard, where the team is working to crack the safe and they break through each layer of the lock. Well, the tension mounts and becomes more and more exciting, especially because there's this ticking clock. Well, in this, there's none of those feelings that are created, which I think is a bummer. So I think the moral to this holiday bloodbath is when the action is going on, the choreography and sequences are filmed well, some even continuously, giving us excitement and cringe-inducing body horrors. But when the action dies down, so does the intrigue. Most of the characters, they're just horrible people. So to have bad things happen to them would actually be a relief rather than something we dread. Now, thankfully, there are a few redeeming characters, and it's all tied together by Harbour's performance as Saint Nick, where he came to eat cookies and kick butt, and he's all out of cookies. So overall, Violent Night lives up to its name by creating bloody carnage in a multitude of well-shot action sequences. David Harbour is wonderful in the lead role, creating a worn-out and downtrodden reluctant hero who rises to the occasion to take on the villains. The story's generic and fairly lackluster, and when the action fades, the pace drags to a near halt. But luckily, there's enough action overall to create an exciting watch. And while most of this may be forgettable, this could become a new holiday favorite simply because of how Santa slays. There's no sex or nudity, a lot of profanity, and then a ton of bloody and brutal violence. I give Violent Night 3.5 out of 5 couches. So what's a favorite holiday movie that you love to watch? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.